Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So many people turned out at a community meeting tonight in Port Perry. They reached capacity and some had to be turned away. The meeting in the small community northeast of Toronto is over a proposed 600-unit housing project. The developer is asking for the local council to endorse its request to have the province override local planning officials, but many in the community came out tonight demanding council say no. Dale Manukduk explains why.
Say no to MZO!
Dozens of people gathered to chant, hoping Scugog Council hears their voice. It's something they've been doing for over 6 weeks, drumming up community support.
So we're here today to protect the wetlands.
A Toronto-based developer.
They're concerned about a 600-unit development proposal along the shores of Lake Scugog.
We're saying let's just push pause on development here until we have adequate infrastructure. We're all about housing. We think that any responsible municipal government is going to grow, but we're saying let's find an appropriate place for it.
The developer wants council to endorse a request for an MZO from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, which would allow the developer to bypass municipal zoning laws.
The traditional township room, which is quite small.
Because of the amount of interest, the meeting had to be held in a community center instead of the council building. There were 18 delegations, including representatives from First Nations, advocating the town and developer go through the traditional municipal planning process.
We've taken a position on behalf of our people that the lake is obviously of utmost importance to us. As Anishinaabe people, where there is water, you will find us.
So many people were in attendance, police had to turn some away once the community hall reached its 400-person capacity.
I think the people of Port Perry are wise enough to know that we don't touch those lands. That's our waterfront, that's our water land, it's a wetland.
The developer says people are misinformed.
People are saying that we're going to impact the wetlands. Actually, we're not going to take 1 square centimeter of wetlands. We have over 100 acres. We're just going to build on less than 20 of them. All the rest is wetlands untouched.
The project has several goals, including building a mixture of housing types that would allow for elderly people to age in place and for young people to work remotely. It also wants to use this 600-unit project as a model, eventually building even larger communities to help Ontario hit its housing targets.
There are no sewers in the area where this project is. Sewers will not be there until 2051, if then. We want to build a project that's not on municipal sewers. We think if we can show that you can build without being on municipal sewers, we can help the government build 1.5 million new homes in Ontario.
One of the criteria for an MZO is that it delivers on a provincial priority. The developer says if Scugog Council isn't on board in endorsing the MZO, it will find a different community to build a project. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Port Perry.
In Toronto, at the Ontario Court of Justice, a teenaged girl has been sentenced in the swarming death of a homeless man in Toronto in December 2022. The girl, who was just 13 years old back then, is the first of the 8 accused girls to be sentenced. Tyler Cheese has the sentencing details.
A 15-year-old girl will not see any additional jail time for her role in the swarming death of Kenneth Lee in 2022. Instead, she'll serve a 15-month probation while participating in an intensive support and supervision program designed as an alternative to custody for young people with mental health disorders. That's in addition to the 15 months of pre-trial custody she was credited. Justice David Stewart-Rose says the non-custodial sentence is preferable as it will help the team focus on accountability, rehabilitation, and reintegration into society. The girl pleaded guilty to manslaughter. She was 13 at the time of the swarming attack.
She had just turned 13 when this occurred, and if it speaks to anything, it speaks to the difficulty of peer pressure, the difficulty of not going along, and I'm glad that the judge also made a point of saying this was not something that was deliberate. It is not as if these girls decided, let's go find a victim.
59-year-old Kenneth Lee was living in the city's shelter system when he was attacked by 8 teenage girls at University Avenue and York Street. None of the girls can be identified under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. The justice clarified the sentenced teen did not deliver the fatal wound that killed Lee, but said she did join the group in physically assaulting him. The girl's lawyer says she regrets participating.
She still needs further counseling and treatment and help, and hopefully that will be done over the next 15 months, and she will become a productive member of society.
While delivering the sentence, the justice outlined the teen's struggles with mental health, including an ADHD diagnosis, which makes her eligible for the rehabilitation program. He also explained other factors that went into his decision, including that the teen pleaded guilty without reservation, wrote a letter of apology to the victim's family, and in his view has taken accountability for her role in Lee's death. The girl also experienced a number of illegal strip searches while in custody. She was also transferred to remote detention facilities, limiting access to her family with little notice. The justice characterized these factors as institutional malfeasance. 3 of the other girls in the case have pleaded guilty. Their trials are ongoing. The other 4 are all set to stand trial next year. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
In Etobicoke, the province's police watchdog is investigating the death of a man who fell from a building in the morning.
My wife woke me up at around 5-ish. She said there were 3 shots, but I heard only one when I got up, and I went out of the door. There was huge police force, and they were just trying to enter the house, and while I was just coming outside, I saw police shots on the lock.
The Special Investigations Unit says officers went to a condo on Sherway Gardens Road to execute a search warrant. Officers then tried to approach a 21-year-old man in an upper floor unit, and the SIU says that man fell from a balcony to a 4th floor patio. Paramedics transported him to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, where he was pronounced dead. The SIU is urging anybody with information about the interaction to contact them. A CBC News investigation has uncovered exclusive new details about the recent arrest of a terror suspect in Quebec. U.S. authorities alleged the Pakistani man was on his way to New York to target Jewish people in an attack. Thomas Dagla shows us why police had to act fast even after they detained him.
When the RCMP detained Mohammed Shahzeb Khan near the U.S. border, CBC News has learned police feared they didn't have enough evidence to keep the Pakistani man in custody for long, and worried he might just carry on with his alleged murder plot targeting Jews in New York. Court documents we obtained show a Toronto detective made an urgent request for a Canadian arrest warrant based on the FBI's evidence that Khan, quote, intended to kill as many Jewish civilians as possible, adding he's a flight risk. And if Khan were to flee to Pakistan, the United States would have limited ability to arrest and extradite him.
An interesting thing about this offense, of course, is that there was criminal conduct allegedly on this side of the border, but an intention to commit criminal conduct on the other side.
The court documents include this picture that authorities pulled from Facebook. They say Khan went by the online alias Shahzeb Jadoon, matching his social media profiles with the information he allegedly gave to undercover officers on encrypted chat.
Once we uncovered this threat, we worked with our partners in Canada to arrest Khan before he could carry out his deadly plot.
According to court documents, police believed this building here in Mississauga near Toronto was Khan's home. But in fact, we found it's an office building.
This unit belonging to an immigration firm was listed as his address, and immigration consultant Fazil Kadir says while Khan came to Canada on a student visa, he was trying to obtain refugee status and stay for good.
So when you heard the allegations, though, that he was an ISIS supporter, was that surprising to you?
Yeah, I was surprised, of course, because I never had any idea about it.
The 20-year-old remains in this Quebec jail, awaiting his next court appearance in December. Thomas Dagla, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Officials in Brampton say the city is making headway on cracking down on illegal rentals run by people they call slum landlords. They say the conditions are ranging from unsafe living standards to sexual exploitation. Brittany Billette has more.
What we're talking about is the worst of the worst.
Brampton's mayor and city councillors say their recently launched program aimed at getting rid of illegal rentals is working.
The fact that of the ones we've had the most ferocious complaints about, that 63% are in compliance, this RRL is working.
The 2-year residential rental licensing pilot began in January in wards where there have been the most complaints. It requires landlords to register with the city before renting out 4 or fewer units. Under the program, bylaw officers can inspect properties, and those who violate city standards can be fined or face penalties.
Without such support, municipalities will struggle to manage the health and safety issues that we face.
They say those complaints include fire code and parking violations, unsanitary living conditions, and sexual exploitation, where landlords are asking female renters for sexual favors in exchange for a bed to sleep on.
The situation here is that many of these girls are afraid to speak out because they're afraid they're going to be deported. Many of them reach out to social agencies directly, which is where I receive my information from.
Officials say there have been over 4,700 inspections, 2,200 issued licenses, and 600 issued notices. 46 locations have come into compliance.
We're on pace to make sure we tackle every one. It's going to take time, but we will not relent. No matter how loud and noisy the protest is, we will not relent.
We have the constitutional right.
Landlords protesting the RRL program say the pilot unfairly targets compliant landlords for their renters' behavior.
These inspectors, city inspectors, are given almost like police powers. Tomorrow, let's say my tenant brings 2 more people, what can I do about it?
We want to clearly tell Mr. Brown, the people who are protesting, who are against this RRR compliant people, don't call them slumlords. If they are slumlord, you are a slum mayor because you are representing the people, slum people.
At the news conference, Mayor Brown dismissed their concerns.
No matter how noisy and loud the Slum Landlord Association is, we will not bow to the pressure to ignore our requirement that you must meet building code and fire code.
Brampton councillors say that the program is much needed because it keeps vulnerable renters safe.
Our city is home to approximately 100,000 international students who deserve a safe and secure housing.
The issue has been
this social worker agrees.
Seeing a low turnover number isn't surprising. What's important is the large number of enforcements, and any activity that shuts down the bad landlords is welcomed and supported by many in social and health and human services.
Mayor Brown says although the program is another cost on taxpayers, his office will continue to keep up the pressure on those who flout safe living standards. Brittany Billette.
Welcome back. I have a significant update tonight on the city's efforts to crack down on congestion in the city. Toronto drivers caught blocking intersections when the lights change will now face significantly steeper fines. And Ali Chiasson explains by how much.
Don't be like these drivers, or else face a hefty ticket. Blocking the intersection used to be an $85 fine. Now it's $450 or $500 in community safety zones.
Everybody runs yellow and red lights. There's no consideration for others.
Folks downtown say it's about time.
You know, everyone wants to go home. Everybody wants to be somewhere quickly. People blocking intersections, especially cars, right? So pedestrians are going around cars through the sidewalk thing, everything. It's ridiculous.
It's a huge problem. I mean, there have to be a solution.
Well, guess what? You're going to pay for bad behavior. We're going to fine you.
Increasing these fines is going to send a clear message to drivers. You cannot clog our roads and risk the safety of our road users just to get a few feet ahead.
The changes are well underway.
The installation of signs like the ones beside me will begin tomorrow, September 17th, starting with our busiest intersections along King Street and Spadina Avenue.
And heads up.
To make it clear that blocking the sidewalk is also considered blocking the box and must be avoided.
These are bylaw officers. They're not the ones out ticketing drivers. That is going to require a police officer. And the police aren't always out patrolling for people blocking the intersection. So unless there's a blitz scheduled, then it's more about the fines being a deterrent.
While blocking the intersection is a common offense, it's not a common ticket. The police only laid 113 charges this year, less than one a day and less than half as often as they were handing out tickets pre-pandemic. To that, Acting Superintendent Matt Moyer says it's about education before enforcement.
The numbers are simply an indicator, and they're not an absolute. If you look behind me, you'll see that part of their responsibility for the traffic marshals is to ensure that the intersections are cleared. Sometimes if you're using enforcement, that would suggest to me that our traffic agents aren't doing their job.
Mayor Chow says she's willing to go a step further, asking the province for enforcement cameras.
We would like cameras to catch them. And we want to take action against congestion.
New signage warning drivers of the violation, and fines will be installed tomorrow, starting with busy intersections in the downtown core. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
You might remember that severe storm that hit back in July. It stranded drivers on highways, caused power outages that brought large parts of the city to a standstill, and caused almost $1 billion in damage to city homes. The whole thing brought renewed scrutiny to City Hall's multi-billion-dollar flood prevention plans. And tonight, in the first of a three-part series, City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords examines what the city is doing to prevent flood damage.
On July 16th in Toronto, the rain came down in a flash. Hard bursts that seemed like they'd never stop. 100 millimeters fell on some parts of the city in less than an hour. Cars were stranded, major highways were overwhelmed, and basements were flooded. Toronto's seen this before. 2005, 2013, 2018. All so-called 100-year storms. Months later, Mayor Olivia Chow says Toronto needs to speed up its flood prevention work.
There's no time to waste. It's better to prevent the flooding than repairing the damages. The damages is not just financial, so we have to do something.
It's just not clear how she'll fund it. Toronto's work to prevent stormwater damage is made up of a patchwork of policies, plans, and protocols. Some have been on the books for decades. Most continue to evolve with each passing year and each severe weather event, influencing council to make changes. The senior civil servant in charge of overseeing those plans is Lou DiGeronimo. The general manager of Toronto Water points to work on the $3 billion Dawn River and Central Waterfront project as evidence of progress.
We never forget the previous storms, just so we're clear, and we have dedicated teams that are working on it all the time. So what do I feel when we know a storm is coming? As I wish we could work faster.
Construction started in 2018 with the 10.5-kilometer Coxwell bypass tunnel. That expanded new tunnel will capture stormwater runoff, which is mixed with raw sewage during big storms. It will connect with 27 local sewer systems and contain 11 storage chambers. Toronto also intends to build 2 other connecting bypass tunnels, the Inner Harbor West Tunnel and the Taylor-Massey Creek Tunnel. Both will be larger than regular sewers and contain storage shafts to hold water during intense weather. The tunnels will meet at the Ashbridges Bay Water Treatment Plant, which is now being expanded to treat and release the increased flows.
What they will notice is they will see their water quality in their local creeks, in the Inner Harbor. They'll see that improve significantly. They'll also see us applying for delisting the harbor as an area of concern.
But DiGeronimo acknowledges that even with billions of dollars in work underway, billions more are needed. That doesn't surprise this expert.
A lot of slow crises rarely get traction, and it's only when you have extreme events that there is a lot of, wake-up calls.
Limited money, increasing construction costs, and stiff competition for technical and engineering expertise have all slowed progress.
We know what needs to be done. We need to complete that work. We need the financing to do that work. The sooner we put the solutions in, the better it is for everyone.
The city's eager to move all of this work forward, but so far, a council request from 2019 to accelerate the project has fallen short. The provincial and federal governments haven't provided cash to accelerate the work. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
The Toronto International Film Festival wrapped up this weekend, and with that, so did one moviegoer's quest to set the record for the most films watched at the festival.
I'm always doing that every year. Last year I watched 63 movies, and this year I thought, okay, well, what would I do next? And when there was the opportunity to do something like this, I took it.
No doubt he did. He says since there's technically no current record, Guinness set the bar at 75 films. So he pledged to watch 78 films in the 10 days of the festival, and he had to gather photo evidence and witness statements to prove that he stayed for each entire film.
speaking of records, it's not a record for us, but, well, it is in terms of the number of days we've had this year dry. Yeah, this was our 7th day in a row, and we haven't seen a stretch like that this year, so not exactly a record. But in terms of our highs, you know, we are looking at temperatures running a good 5 degrees above normal. In some cases, how about 8, like today? 28, we were almost 28 degrees yesterday as well, so a really nice stretch there. The last time we were that warm was, it wasn't that long ago, but the end of August, the 31st of August. Our normal low is 11, and look at those overnight lows, also kind of those mid-teens, so running on the mild side. So now with these highs, we also know we have some of that humidity. So some of that moisture that is in the air with the longer nights that we're getting, the sun setting a little earlier, up a little bit later. We have been getting some of that patchy fog, especially close to the lakeshore, but really we have that potential to see that again elsewhere too. So some of the lower lying communities, be aware of that. The sun, because we're getting lots of that, should be burning that off pretty quickly though. And then we get into some bright skies. I say bright, but there is going to be a little bit of this high thin cloud coming our way. That's really off of a system that's bringing torrential rains there towards the Carolinas, North Carolina, along the eastern seaboard. So for now, we're just going to take some of the cloud cover from that. For Tuesday into Wednesday, a little bit more. Now, one model does want to start bringing some showers in on Wednesday, but I've got your Canadian model up there. And for now, it's keeping them out, and I tend to be agreeing with that. We'll kind of take another look at things tomorrow, but it seems like that ridge of high pressure is going to keep protecting us, and this dry streak is going to carry on, and the mild streak as well. So 17 for your low overnight tonight. The sunrise tomorrow morning just before 7 a.m. Sunset at 7:23. 26, it's still going to feel like 29. It's just because a little bit of that cloud, but also as we see that wind shifting towards the east, that's the only reason I'm taking the temperature down a couple of degrees from where it was today.